My name is Catherine Lutes, CSC, and I've been working as a director of photography since 2003. I went to film school at the University of British Columbia, and when I did that, everyone was wanting to be a director, and somehow quickly we started the semester, and I went, I don't think I want to be a director. I think I want to do this thing. So I went to film school, and then I started doing short films and all those freebies that I could do with my friends, and at the same time I was working as an electric and working on other people's sets, and I worked as an electric in Vancouver for a few years while DPing kind of short films and passion projects, and just kind of kept doing it. Did documentary work and eventually started doing more and more narrative, and yeah. My sensibilities, I'm not sure. I mean, I know that it's a hard thing to identify what exactly makes you who you are, but I've grown to realize whatever that is about me is valuable. It's a specific point of view, it's a specific set of experiences that I'm bringing that the next person doesn't have. I like to tell stories. I like to be a part of a film that believes an audience is smart and can be challenged, and we don't have to spoon feed them everything. So I try to approach projects a little bit with that in mind. I try to go see films all the time. I try to go and see other art, and I look at a lot of photography, a lot of painting, and that kind of thing. But honestly, I think that some of the life stuff is the most important. When you're sitting somewhere and you're looking at how light's coming in through a window, when you have a moment with somebody that looks special, feels special, and you try to think about how do you capture that emotion again on set. Those things are important. So many things, and I feel like it changes on every project exactly what that role is and what you need to do to kind of fit into that role. The ideal version of it is that you're making the film beautiful, you're making beautiful images, you're, the image maker. But to be honest, there's a huge other component that is the director's confidant and the, negotiating with producers, being a manager of teams, being someone that can manage time and get things done, all the not fun parts, but actually are very important to our job and having them be successful. My biggest struggle is probably finding the work-life balance and staying healthy. It's very hard to balance out what you're doing. You work and it's full on, and you kind of live that, whatever the project you're doing, for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And so finding the time to kind of balance that out. And I think it's valuable for us as cinematographers to come to projects with fresh ideas and life experiences and all these things that you can only gain from not always being on set, because the set brain is only one part of it, So the struggle for me is kind of finding that balance and feeling like I'm leading a healthy life outside of working as well. All the other struggles I've come to think of as kind of joys, actually. It's there are a lot of struggles and they stress you out, but they're the challenges that make it kind of exciting too, right? If everything was easy, then it'd be boring. I'm not the first person to say this, but I think there's something to be said for representation, and it's hard to become something that you don't see, and there's not been a lot of women represented out there. So when people think about a cinematographer, they think about an older white man often. So I think part of it is that we're not represented, we haven't been seen, we haven't had those role models, we haven't thought about it as a path that we can succeed in, but we can. I don't know why, but I never thought about it when I started out. I've always been pretty aware of gender inequality and those kind of issues, but when I started, I never thought about it. I wasn't thinking, oh, there's no women, this is going to be difficult, this is a harder path. I never had that in my head, and I'm really glad that I didn't, that I just went in there this is a job and I'm going to do it, and this is what I want to do. I never had that in my head that there was something I couldn't do. I wish I'd been given the advice that there's no one pathway to becoming a cinematographer. Like, I feel there were many years where I finished school and I was, okay, I want to be a cinematographer, now what do I do? What's the step? You know, and there's no step. There's 10, 20, 30 different steps. There's a million different ways to get there. Right? You can go through, be a camera trainee and go up through the camera department. You can go into lighting. You can just kind of buy a camera and start shooting. There's so many different ways in, and you kind of have to figure out what works for you. And I did, but I think there were a few years lost there where I was sort of expecting there to be a, here's how it happens. Because in so many other jobs, that's what happens, right? You do this position, and then you move to that position, and that's how it all works. But in this industry, there's kind of no guarantee of that working out. And for some people, the camera department really works for them, and for others, that's a very difficult thing, or you don't think about it in that same mentality. The lighting department could be helpful, or gripping, or anything, you know. Yeah. I try to be patient, I think, which, as I've worked with more and more directors, you realize everybody is like a totally different personality, and no two jobs are going to be the same. And you need to kind of go in there and, you know, you're helping the director interpret their vision. So a little bit of, you know, reading those human qualities is important. I do bring a specific visual aesthetic to what I do, and it's not always the same as everybody else's. And staying true to that and kind of developing that is a joy for me. It's like going and taking stills and finding new things that I find visually appealing is very exciting. For a long time when I was starting out, I tried to not have any traits that seemed particularly feminine, which was not necessarily a good thing. And I think now, years later, I can kind of embrace the traits that are feminine and go, oh, that actually helps me a little bit. Being honest with people, being very open with my camera crews and my crews and directors, and I'm not afraid to show vulnerability or uncertainty if it's true. I don't need to kind of have the false bravado all the time. And I think that's a good trait. And it's something that for a long time I tried to pretend wasn't there. The biggest aha moments. I think I've had many aha moments, and I hope to keep having them, because there's always something to learn, whether it's something specifically technical or just about how to negotiate through the world of film industry. You know, the second I learned about negative fill, it changed everything for me. It was like, oh, okay, this is a tool that I should have been using all along, and for some reason you only learned this is a bounce board and here's how you lift the light. It's one of the most basic things, but I can remember being young and going, oh, yeah, that's good. Other aha moments are, you know, sort of personal journey stuff where learning that other people's successes aren't your failures, you know, spending time when you're just concentrating on what everybody else is doing is never helpful to what you're doing. You need to just pay attention to you and do your thing, follow your path, and it works out, you know. Trying to compare yourself to others is not a great way to go about it. And, you know, I did that for a moment in time and then went, no. I had a really great year this year. And it felt very exciting to have made choices about the kind of films that I wanted to make, and then to have those films be successful. So a movie called Firecrackers and Mouthpiece both played at TIFF this year, and those were both movies that were a dream to make, were such an amazing experience, were things that I was expressing myself the way that I wanted to and didn't feel like compromised. And they were really choices that I very consciously made to do films like that, and so it felt great to have them be to do well and to be, you know, in the spotlight like that. Well, I definitely see a lot more women out there. People are more open to women cinematographers being out there. I hope that it keeps changing, because I still feel like there's a bit of people kind of going, we're going to take a risk with you. And it's like, what? There's no risk involved. I mean, no more than somebody else, right? You could take a risk because maybe I don't have the same experience as this other person, but not because I'm a woman. And I do see that changing. There's a lot of conversation happening, but it's still, I think there's still a ways to go. I mean, the industry is changing crazily because of technology and access that we have to technology and access we have to light and cameras that shoot quickly and fast and need very little light. So it allows young DPs to kind of start trying things and sharpening their skills without needing the huge expensive tools, which I think is interesting, and it'll be interesting to see where that goes. And commercial world seems like that's changing as well in terms of the world of content exists in such a different way. Everything that's online is still valuable content to be created. So everyone's sort of trying to figure out where that all goes and what our positions are in that landscape as well. I'd like to see more women doing it and being out there, and more quality projects being made. In Canada, I'd like to see some of the risk-taking directors be given the space and the means to kind of make their projects. And I think it is changing, not be trying to be sort of the poor man's version of the American system, but to just kind of do our own thing. We've always, internationally, people love the filmmakers like David Cronenberg and Adam Egoyan and these people that were making these wacky, weird, wonderful movies, and we somehow moved away from that, trying to do our version of American films. And I think if we can just kind of let our filmmakers do their own thing, we're going to create some really cool and interesting projects. Hopefully that then become recognized again internationally, but yeah. I've been moving more towards dramatic stuff. When I first started, I was doing a lot more comedy. I'd like to do some more psychological thriller kind of stuff where I can really play. I just want to continue telling stories that I like and that I find challenging and that I think challenge audiences. I had a mentor. I was working in Vancouver, and I worked with another cinematographer, James Liston. He was also young at the time, but was ahead of me and was working quite a bit. And so he and his crew, they were doing a lot of films and short films and music videos and commercials, and so they would bring me along to everything. And then quickly, James, as he was doing other projects, started to give me some of the short films he couldn't do or he didn't have time to do, introduced me to those directors. And so I started sort of taking on some of those jobs, which really was a huge step in my career, because it kind of introduced me to people who weren't just the people I was in film school with and things like that. Those guys were really amazing, and it's interesting, like in the last couple of years with all these discussions about how women are treated on set and some of the things that have happened in this sort of era, I look back and think how lucky I was. I had these group of guys who never blinked twice, never made me feel like I was a woman on set. I was just there doing what they were doing. We were all doing it together and learning together, and yeah, there was no divide there, and that was really amazing. Yeah. Every set that I'm on, every time is different, whether you're learning about the choices that you made and if they were the most efficient / made the most sense for that production, whether it gave the director the time they needed to work with the actors and get the scene, or whether, those sort of learning processes are small things that aren't, again, they're not the glamorous image-making part of the job, but they're really important. And ultimately, you're trying to make a really good film, not just a good image. I still have tons of things to learn, and I'm excited about them. I was just talking about shooting film again the other day, and how I went to bed and had those like nightmares of the film coming back black or something, you know, it was something going wrong. Sharpening the tools, maybe I knew before, but kind of keeping them fresh. And I think that stuff is important because it's easy to get comfortable with the things that you know. For me, I've had times where an image isn't working out, something's not quite right, and then you rely on a trick that you always use. And I don't want to do that. I want to find new ways to overcome those things. If something's not working out, it's like, well, how can I fix it without relying on just my old habits and tricks? You have to just keep going. It's not always the easiest. It's a lot of work. But make the things that you want to make and that you feel passionate about and that speak to you and feel true, and hopefully that will come across and help you develop who you are as a cinematographer and your vision and your eye. And when we talk about what kind of traits you bring, sometimes that's a hard thing to categorize, but it's like all the stuff that somehow has been built into who I am is important. And I think you develop that by working and shooting and choosing scripts and choosing projects and choosing the people that you want to work with, and all that starts to make you who you are, yeah, and those traits that you can bring.